All righty, folks, it is that time again. It is when we get to look back over the last 7 days and see what you all put in the comments, the spicy, the helpful, the inquisitive. And of course, we need to welcome Millennial Mike, who actually does all the hard work. He does this, I don't. So we all get to thank him. Mike, thank you so much for doing this.
No, thank you. Yeah, people love this segment. Not only do we react to comments and questions, but we take video suggestions from the audience, and those are very popular as well. We had a Ken McElroy video that did really well last week. People liked. But this week we have some great topics. We have topics like the market's really competitive. What do I do? Section 8 questions. You talked a lot about Section 8 with Brian Adamson this week. Another one that people are always curious about, how to find seller financing deals. So there's a lot of good topics in today's video. And we're going to start with the market is so competitive. This one's from Regan Hillebret. Hopefully I said that right. He says, I want to shop for real estate, but it's proving to be very difficult. It's worse than COVID days out there. I love the days of 60 houses in one town to go shopping. Right now, we have 4 houses available in our town and only 40 houses in our entire county. It's nearly impossible. I need a rental property dopamine hit, don't we all? And we have made 10 offers in the last 6 months, but we can't win the bids, especially when we're fighting against owner-occupied buyers. Mike, any advice?
Yeah. So first off, acknowledge that, real estate investing, especially when you do the work like we do, is always hard. Why is it hard? It's because we only want positive cash flow. We don't gamble. We only do good or great deals, right? So just by being better and having standards, it's always hard. I will admit today being probably harder than most, right? I've been doing this 23 years. We're in the top 5 for hardest year. So I will acknowledge that. That said, it's time to get creative, right? So continue doing what you're doing. I'm glad you know your numbers and your stats. Awesome. But now let's grow your network. One of the things that I see a lot of folks, and again, I don't know this individual at all, but I've had this query enough, is they're relying on the MLS. They're relying on agents. And it's time to do what I say, right? I have 7 steps, one rental at a time, and one of it is meet 2 new people a week. Well, go meet 2 new people a week, tell everybody your buy box, get off your computer and go to meetups. Your ability to get deals done today and in a market that is as tough as he says is probably going to come off market. And that's just the truth. And again, off market deals are generally speaking always amazing. But you got to do the work. If they don't know you exist and they don't know your buy box, whose fault is that? It's not the wholesalers, it's yours. Also, reach out to 2 agents a week. Tell them your buy box. You never know when an agent gets a listing that they're like, hey, my seller wants to sell, but they don't want to put it on because it's a little dirty and they don't want to clean or whatever. Be the right answer. Be that person. So generally speaking, congratulations for doing the work. Congratulations for knowing the numbers. But you got more to do would be my general thought.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about networking later and how to find those seller financing deals. So if you didn't like the answer to that question, if you want more context, wait, we're going to get there later in this video. All right, the next question, explaining the home ownership metric. This was a question on a video we did earlier this week. Great video, Mike, regarding the 66% home ownership number that you mentioned in the video. If I buy a home and I rent it out, where does that fall within the metric? I own it, but someone else rents it out. Would I be part of the 66% of home ownership metric, or does that only include primary?
It's only primary residence. Your tax bill, your insurance bill, all these other things will go to a different address. You would be considered in the 34%. The 66% is a legit homeowner number. Is it perfect? Probably not. But no, real estate investors are not included. Let's be clear. You buy a home, you live in it, you move, you were in the 66%. And once you move, you're not included in that number. Probably your next property will be included, but that one won't. So it's a relatively clean number. And again, 66% means nothing without context. Again, that's why the 53-year spreadsheet, which people can get on onerentalatatime.com for free. It's in the lower right corner. Put it down, and it'll be emailed to you automatically. It's one of the things I paid to get done on the site. Go look at the home ownership for the last 53 years. I think it's ranged from like 63 to 68 in change. So we're, right in the middle to the higher end. And the other thing to talk about is home ownership is up 7 years in a row. So all these doomers talking about millennials can't do this or you can't ever buy them. You guys are just nuts. You don't know what's going on. So No, yeah. So that's a little rant on that.
Good. Well, I'm glad you can explain that metric a little bit because you do talk about things that some of us plebes might consider a little highbrow. We get a little confused and lost in the sauce. So that's why we have this Q&A section. Now, this week, you talked a lot about Section 8. You kept asking a question. Are other owners, landlords, investors experiencing what Brian Adamson was talking about when he talked about there being a surplus of Section 8 rentals and a lack of qualified Section 8 vouchers to get those rentals? I'm going to answer that for my market of Gary, Indiana. That's not what we're seeing. One of the main points that I make all the time when I defend buying rental properties or fixing them up, when people say, oh, you're stealing those from the working class who should be able to buy a home. And I tell them, look, when I get a rental property, when I buy a house that's been abandoned for longer than I've been alive, and then I fix it up and I bring it back to the market and I partner with Section 8 to house a tenant, it's quite literally like winning the lottery because there's months, years worth of demand of Section 8. They've closed the wait list. You can't even get on the wait list to get a voucher to hopefully even shop for a house. So when I get a property to the market and then pair that up with a Section 8 tenant, it's like they've won the lottery. They're never going to leave because they have nowhere else to go. So I'm sorry that's happening to Brian's market, not happening in mine. The question from G Inro 495 says, based on the data that I've read, it seems like Section 8 tenants stay from somewhere between 5 to 8 years. Mike, has that been your experience?
Yeah, and again, only because I had the data and the experience. Generally speaking, it's a true statement, but let's even go a little deeper. Section 8 average in houses is over 8 years. Section 8 in apartments, it's about 3.5. So a little bit longer than cash tenants, but not 8 years. Why is that? Because generally speaking, their goal is to get a house. So they'll take an apartment until they can get a house, and then they will transfer. So if you're talking houses, 8 years, it's a pretty well-known stat. In my portfolio, I did this calculation like a year and a half ago. It was like 8.4 years. So yeah, houses, apartments, not quite true.
Yeah, so I've been in Section 8, using Section 8 for the last 2 years, so I can't, from my personal experience, say I've had tenants stay that long. But anecdotally, through talking to my property manager and other investors in my area, I can confirm that also is what we're seeing, is that they stay for, on average, 7 years. That's one of the reasons why when I place a Section 8 tenant, I'm not sure how they do it in your market, Mike, but sometimes Section 8 can pay like up to like $1,300, but some of that's allotted towards utilities, and then depending on whether or not they have a job, Section 8 might not pay as much. So I make sure that when I place a Section 8 tenant, because I know they're going to be there long term, I want to get the right Section 8 tenant and not just take any Section 8 tenant, because I'm lucky enough to have the choice of countless numbers of Section 8 tenants that are applying.
Well done.
Okay, so liquidity crisis. This was a video that you did with Jonathan Twombly. Scott Taylor 4341 says, how do you expect supply to get gobbled up by this time next year if we are in a liquidity crisis?
So I think that video, and again, this is for the general audience, I think that video was mainly around multifamily. So this is the bigger stuff. This is not single family homes, just so we can clear that up. And really the answer is yes, there is liquidity. But in a liquidity crisis, what this individual may not appreciate is there's lots of off-ramps to resolution. So what might some of those off-ramps be to make the liquidity process less problematic for inventory? One is something that generally speaking is called extend and pretend. We have an operator whose loan covenants have been broken. Instead of foreclosing or making them do a cash in refi because they simply don't have it, we will look the other way for another year or two. So again, there will be problems where in a liquidity crisis, the bank will just keep the loan and push it off. It's called extend and pretend. We will have opportunities for sellers to list and sell. And if you haven't watched what's going on with the billionaire real estate funds, you're not paying attention. There's a lot of vulture funds. They may not call themselves that, but that's what I call them, ready to pounce on small haircuts. And again, what's really the problem here that most people don't realize, and again, I've been warning about this, but people just aren't hearing me. It's the equity that will lose, not the banks. The equity will lose gigantic. The banks will lose little bits. Because again, in a commercial market, you're going to be at 75% LTV. So let's use some numbers. Let's say it's a $100 million thing. So you're going to be into that. Let's say $30 million is equity. So you have 70 million debt. Okay, now you have a problem. This seller can't sell. We fire sell $100 million asset for 65 million bucks. That's a fire sale. What just happened? Well, the 30 million in equity got wiped out and the bank lost 5.
Yeah.
That's why I kept warning LPs. I'm like, God, you guys are getting into deals. And then of course we have that 3,200 unit in Houston, Texas that lit 100 million on fire in 11 months.
Jeez.
Dude, there's more of that coming. So yeah, the banks are generally speaking, other than San Francisco office, which is a catastrophe, they're in pretty good shape.
Well, staying on the topic of larger multifamily properties, we did a video with Ken McElroy. He was a little late to predict there was going to be some trouble. You know, he was only a year behind your predictions. But on that video, Todd 3382 made the comment in the question. He said, so when would be a good time to start looking to buy commercial property if they're going to be distressed?
Hopefully I said this in my response. The answer is today. The key word in his statement.
I think that was your one word response.
Yes. Yeah. And again, the key is looking. You have to get ready to be ready. And that's what a lot of people are like. A lot of people want to time this thing out, and that's not how this works. You've got to get ready. You got to get your capital ready. You got to get your relationships ready. You got to get to know people. Your Rolodex has got to triple or quadruple. Dude, I mean, the next 6 months should be all about getting ready and shopping. You should understand what a cap rate is, and you should understand value. You should understand occupancy and taxes and insurance. Most people who've never played in this space, they got 6 or 9 months of working. So the answer is now. If the question is when might a deal pop up, the earliest is Q4. I think it's far more likely next summer, so 12 months from now. But the answer is today, man. I mean, everybody's waiting for like a light switch. When the light switch goes on, people like me who've been ready for years, we're going to pounce so fast, your head's going to spin.
Yeah, and it almost sounds like you're telling people to, I don't know, do the work.
Some of you need to buy the hat. Everybody needs to go buy the sticker. Your sticker should be on your computer, remind you, do the work. Somebody posted it on Instagram. They put it on their water bottle. So shout out whoever that was.
Yeah, get some slaps, throw them up there. Yeah. All right. Okay. So this week I decided to do something different. This one wasn't necessarily a question, but what I did like is it was a great comment. And so I decided to dub this the comment of the week. It's valuable insight about living beneath your means. So this one is from JNYC. I don't know if that's New York City or what. The JNYC says, the trickiest thing in regards to lifestyle creep is how to make a fully fed person imagine hunger. The comfort keeps you trapped.
Yeah, I remember reading that one and thinking this guy is far smarter and more eloquent than I am. That is really the key. And again, my 3 steps to getting wealthy, it's out there for everyone. Wealthy is for you to define what it is, but the key is 10 years. And I can't tell you how many people are hungry like you and I are. Mm-hmm. And then at year 4 or 5, they get comfortable and they stop, or worse, go backwards. I have friends who got 5 or 6 years deep into this. And then they got stupid, or they got comfortable. So frustrating.
I always say that one of the biggest benefits to my life, the greatest blessings that I ever had, was being born dirt poor, the oldest of 6 kids from 3 different dads. My mom was a single mom, had a job that I can't say on YouTube or you'd get demonetized. And because I grew up hungry, I know what I'm working for. And one of the biggest disadvantages that the upper middle class or the rich people have with their kids is they're just born with no perspective, no desire. And I wouldn't change anything about my childhood, no matter how bad it was, because as JNYC, who again has a comment of the week, said, the trickiest thing in regards to lifestyle creep is how to make a fully fed person imagine hunger. Until they've lived it, they just don't know what it's like. So all right, and that's an inspiration to you guys out there. Not only do we take good questions, but moving forward, I'm going to select one comment each week that I think gives the best perspective or a great insight, and will feature you. All right, now touching base with the first question that we asked, which was about how to get started in a tough market. We're going to talk about how to find seller financing deals. One of the very first pieces of advice that Zuber ever gave me after we very first had our interview back in 2018 when I bought my first rental, he said 2 things. Number 1, you have to learn to network. And number two, you have to learn seller financing. So this question comes from JT-VJ4TP. He says, can you comment on how easy or hard it is for the average investor to find a seller finance deal, especially if we don't have a silver tongue like Pace Morby? I believe I heard David Green talk about seller financing being really hard to get, and everything needs to fall into place. What the seller wants with price and terms, what you're willing to pay, etc. And that you might be better off saving money from your W-2 for a down payment on a traditional loan. It was the first time I felt okay for not being successful making any deals work creatively these past 6 months. So I think the core of this question is, it's really tough to find seller financing. There's not an MLS or a realtor.com for seller finance deals. So how do we find it? How hard is it going to be? What can be done?
Yeah, so there's a couple of thoughts here. So it is extremely rare to find it in the MLS, which is probably where most people are shopping. Not impossible, but rare. Like really rare. like really rare.
Yep.
But that said, they are out there. So let's talk about how first, and then talk about what you and I talked about 5 years ago. So generally speaking, seller financing deals are most common when a seller, or I shouldn't say seller, when an owner owns it free and clear. Most of you are not using tools to figure that out. So if you actually go to my website, onerentalatatime.com, under product recommendations, one of the products that I recommend is PropStream. PropStream is a tool that my team uses in Fresno at the hub to find specific things. And one of the searches is owners of property that are free and clear or very low debt, that have owned the properties 10 or 15 years or greater. So you have to seek a seller or an owner that might be open, low debt or own free and clear, owned for a long time, out of state, out of area, right? There are flags that increase your likelihood, but going on the MLS and just writing, hey, I want to do seller financing on everything that's listed, is a recipe for frustration, because most people, even if they wanted to, can't say yes. So I don't think most people do the work. So PropStream is the tool that I use and many use. You can find a link, and I think there's a code for some savings there. You can have it if you want. But that said, I think the bigger thing, and what I pushed you to learn, and you said at your opening, is learning seller finance. You don't, generally speaking, offer something to someone that has never heard of it and get an answer you like. You need to learn how to pitch it, why it's good to them. Hey, if I bought your property for $100,000 or $200,000, what would you do with the money? For some people, that's a problem. Well, you know what? You've been a landlord for 20 years. You've been living on cash flow. What if we can maintain the income, but I take the headaches? Oh, do you like the IRS? What if we could do a deal where you could give the middle finger to the IRS? Would you like to talk about that? So all of these things are ways to initiate conversations. They are not guaranteed ways to get a yes answer. They are themes that Pace Morby knows, and he works in, and he does have a silver tongue, so shout out him. But everybody can learn it. There's only a few angles. Most people are too aggressive. They're too upfront. They're just shooting a shotgun, where you need to search. It's like I don't know, what are those metal detectors? Looking for gold or coins or whatever. I suggest using PropStream to help get closer to where those are. And then don't be aggressive, right? How do you like the IRS? What about maintaining income? What about reducing headaches? What about security? What about this? What about that? And you never know. So again, most people don't do the work, they just don't do the work. So back to that.
So I've noticed with the seller financing deals that I've done, they seem to come from two categories. Number one, somebody wants a price the market will not pay right now. For whatever reason, they want to sell their property for $150,000, and this thing's worth $120,000. And they're willing to entertain seller financing only because if they sell it on seller financing, they can get their price. You have the story about the guy you got 1% interest rate from, right? You stole that deal from him, but he thought he stole it from you. I've got similar stories. So if you can tell the seller, I'll give you your price, but you have to give me my terms, interest rate, amortization schedule, down payment amount, that type of stuff. That's one avenue. The other avenue that I see a lot of people willing to do seller financing, it's kind of related to the first, is properties that have a severe amount of deferred maintenance. Essentially, the landlord has operated it poorly. They've sucked out all the depreciation. They've let the thing become dilapidated. And now they're being faced with the prospect of spending a ton of money to make repairs that most likely they don't have because they probably don't have reserves. Now they want to sell it, maybe not for top dollar, but they know that it's not going to go to anybody with any type of good lending. It's not going to pass some appraisals, some inspections, any of that type of stuff. So now they're saying, okay, I got to sell it cash for a huge discount, or maybe I can get a little bit more money, again, back to the more money side, with seller financing. Now, this is where you have to be careful. A lot of seller financing terms may include some type of balloon payment. If you're overpaying for the asset, you need to be careful that your balloon payment doesn't come up so quickly that you overpaid for it, and now it's not even worth that, and the balloon payment's due, and you got to pay them the rest of the money. You also need to be careful that you don't buy something that is so much in repairs that when you combine the purchase price with the repair costs, you've now overpaid for the property. So my advice to you, based on exactly what Mike said, it really comes down to networking, is advice to me. All my seller financing deals are because I talk to everybody. I got two from my property manager, and I encourage everyone to do this. Guess what? Your property manager manages other people's properties, including tired landlords, frustrated landlords. Who do you have, property manager, that's frustrated with their property, that's not making their repairs on time, that seems like they want to get out, that's disinterested? Could you make an introduction? Can I talk to them? Can I offer to take over that problem from them? That's where I would start, right there. And then I was going to share a seller financing deal that I got under contract a couple of weeks ago. I'll give you the terms right now. Purchase price $115,000. Down payment $11,500, 10%. Interest rate 4%. Full amortization 30 years, no balloon. Monthly payments $494 to the seller, and it's going to rent for $1,600 a month. That right there. Go ahead.
That doesn't suck.
It's a good deal, right? And
no.
That's a great deal. Mike, I'm sorry, I keep doing this.
Not a good deal. That is a great deal. What are you doing to me?
My bad. Those deals are out there. Where did I find it? In a Facebook group from a wholesaler who was trying to sell it as a mortgage wrap, where he added his own terms to it that made it not as good, so people weren't picking it up. I talked to the wholesaler, decided to just pay him off so that I can get his terms, which were significantly better. But all that starts with conversations. Anyways, I'll stop talking. Mike, let's get back to another question for you, all right?
You got it.
This one, it was an interesting question. It was about tenant security deposit horror stories. This one was from Shred419. He says, thanks, Mike, for putting these together. They're great. Hot Take Sundays. He's referencing our Q&A video last week. He says, I have a question I don't think I've heard covered before. Do you have any deposit horror stories? Tenants threatening violence over not getting a deposit refund, that kind of thing. What's your craziest story?
Oh, yeah, generally speaking, those happen all the time. Again, one of the things that I'm lucky about is I don't have to deal with any of that, right? I have a property manager, so insulated from that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, generally speaking, there are plenty of people that demand, once they move out, they get their security deposit. I've had people demand their security deposit before they move out. People are crazy, especially in tough times. And a lot of people think their security deposit is just like a savings account or a CD that they can cash later. And it is absolutely not. So yeah, it happens all the time. I had somebody way back when go to small claims court over it, which was fun. But yeah, they're out there. People are stupid. It happens. It's nothing to be too concerned about.
Well, I just want everybody to notice how casually I said, Mike, have you ever been threatened with violence? Oh yeah, that happens all the time, but don't be too concerned about it. Well, shoot, man. Some people are. All right. One more question, or hold on. Yeah. One more comment and then a last comment. So 21-year-old, where to start? This one comes from Eli Cargus 548. He says, great interview. Quick question. I'm 21 years old, going into my senior year of college next fall. I currently help manage student housing in my college town over the summer. We have a mix of students and residential tenants. I don't have that much saved, but I want to buy my first rental property. Should I be looking more into seller financing route, or should I just take the time to save a 5% for an FHA conventional loan or owner occupied? Thanks again.
Yeah, what I would tell that individual to do is go research Sam Zell. Sam Zell, unfortunately, recently passed in the last 30 or 45 days. Sam Zell was a billionaire. His nickname was the Grave Dancer. And if I was 21 years old managing college units, he would be my hero. I would go watch every interview. I'd read his book. I said, I think his book's called Am I Being Too Subtle? Why do I say that to this individual? Because that is Sam Zell. He starts his journey in student housing. So when in doubt, go research somebody that did it. Mm. So I would tell this guy, go read Sam Zell's stuff. And
I would
stop
say,
overthinking it.
I agree with you 100%. And I would add to that. Currently, right now, you're developing a skill. You are managing student housing. You have a skill that most people don't have. You have property management skills. You need to go down to your local real estate investing meetup and network with people and start offering to manage a couple of their properties and see if you can then learn to partner with these people. Because guess what? At some point, they're going to sell. And if you develop a relationship with them over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, who are they going to want to sell to? The trusted individual they feel they've mentored for the last decade, or some random person? You have a great skill that not many people have. Play on that. Yeah.
And again, I don't know if you guys know Ken McElroy, but Ken McElroy's journey starts in student housing as well. And it was that networking that got him his first deal, which I think he still owns today, if I remember his story correctly. So again, I think you're in a great spot. You're doing great things. Don't rush. But yeah, go research Sam Zell. And if you want, go look at Ken McElroy and how his journey started.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Final question. This one was kind of more of a comment. So you did a video last week on Ken McElroy. And in that video, you gave a little intro to Ken McElroy. You said he was better at YouTube. He had been more successful in real estate investing, and that he was even better looking than you. Well, at Easy Rider 11 disagrees. They said, I think Mike is better looking. So I just want to let you know you're wrong. The fans said you had a couple comments like that. The fans said you had Kenny beat. Just saying.
Well, that's very sweet of them to say that. It's okay. It's I think again, I poke at Ken a little bit because again, he tried to dip his toe into residential real estate, and that's not his thing. He had that. He didn't understand the tax thing. I mean, I want to be clear. I'm a Ken McElroy fan. I think he's doing amazing things. I think he's a legit helper, but he shouldn't play in single family. He's embarrassing himself every time he does.
Mm-hmm. Mike, those are all the questions that we had for this week. I encourage anybody out there who's watching, please leave comments below, leave them on other videos. If you have something insightful, leave that. It might get featured as the comment of the week. If you have videos you want us to react to, that's something we do an awful lot of. Send those videos to me on Instagram or to Mike, and we'll make sure that we queue it up. Mike, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And then one more time, go to onerentalataime.com. You will see products that I recommend. One of them is PropStream, which is the kind of metal detector for seller financing. And most importantly, I spent thousands and thousands of dollars writing up a new website so I could feature the millionaires. So you can go right there. It says Meet the Millionaires, and go meet Mike and all the others. So Mike, thank you for doing that, buddy. Take care.
Thank you.